was it like on the witness stand?
Well, I must admit I was very nervous, but again, I really didn't feel challenged because you can't challenge the truth.
I'm going to tell you about a friend of mine. Her name was Virginia Graham. Now, Virginia Graham is largely responsible for helping authorities solve the Tate LaBianca murders of 1969. Not to be confused with the other Virginia Graham, who was a talk show host. My Virginia Graham, or my friend Virginia, was a self-described party girl who moved along with the 60s and 50s swinging Hollywood crowd, even becoming friends with Frank Sinatra. They were close friends. Now, socially, she also knew Jay Sebring, the men's hairstylist. Virginia once considered renting the house on Cielo Drive where the murders occurred. She decided against it, but she did tour the house and she knew what the layout of the house looked like, and that's extremely important. So for a reason which is now kind of laughable, Virginia was in prison. She had floated a bad check and she was given parole, and she went out of state and didn't tell her parole officer, and she ended up being sentenced for, I think it was 6 months in prison for, a bad check, which was kind of stupid. But she ended up in the infamous Sybil Brand Institute, the women's prison. Now, Susan Atkins, the member of the Manson family who participated in the Tate LaBianca murders, ended up in a cell, or in the, sort of dormitory with Virginia. Now, Susan started bragging to people that she was the person who was involved with the Tate LaBianca murders. She said, those murders that happened up in Benedict Canyon? Guess who did it? I did it. And nobody took her seriously. Everyone thought she was just, nutty. But then Virginia asked a few more questions, and Susan described the inside of the house where the murders occurred, and that clicked, and Virginia knew that she was telling the truth. Unable to keep it to herself, Virginia told a fellow prisoner, Ronnie Howard. And between Virginia and Ronnie Howard, the information was put together, and Susan Atkins and the rest of the family were charged, and ultimately they were found guilty of the Tate LaBianca crimes. Sadly, Virginia passed away on April 17, 2022. She was 89 years old. This recording is our final conversation when I visited her a few months before she passed away. This is Virginia's final interview.
What was it like? And the minute she told me about the bead ceilings and how it went in, I knew then that she wasn't drugged out or wacky or whatever, Yeah.
That's such a... Well, I play your interview a little bit. I play about a minute of you on my tour. And people really like it. And the first thing, it's the weirdest thing, Virginia. We talk... Okay, we go to the Tate house, we drive up the hill, I stop for a little while, explain some other things, and I play your tape. And then we go a little bit further, and I go to where the little boy found the gun. Because I interviewed him not that long ago, too.
Yeah.
And after that was over with, I talk about the reward. And the little boy says he never got that money. He was supposed to get $1,000.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it was split between you and Ronnie.
That's correct.
And the first thing that comes out of their mouth, what was Virginia in for?
I know. Like I was some criminal.
Well,
that always bothered me.
Yeah.
Credibility, the fact that you do have 2 prior felony convictions, the fact that there is a reward somewhere in the future for someone, and you apparently stand as good a chance as anyone else to possibly receive it. How do you think your testimony registered with the jury?
I have no idea, except I told absolutely what I knew to be true, and somehow I feel that the jury felt that I did tell the truth.
But it was parole violation. But what was the original charge that you were on parole for?
Well, I was on parole because I had written a check to the hospital.
To Cedars. I thought that was the parole violation.
No, that's what I got in trouble for. And then I got. Let's see, how long was I there? I was about there a year, believe it or not, for that. And then when I got out, I broke my parole by going out of town and not getting permission. That's how I got back in then.
And how long were you in the second time?
Let me see, quite a few months. Quite a few months until they decided what to do with me, And of course, then that's when the Manson thing came up, and You know what's interesting? I never ever once got a break one. You know, you hear where people make deals and all that. Never at all.
They never gave you some time off for that?
Never. No.
Wow.
No,
that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I know. In fact, Vince Bugliosi, and I said we became friends. I mean, I talked to him up until just a year or so ago when he died. And he says, Virginia, I'll never figure out why you were here. You know, over something like that. But anyway, I was, and if I hadn't been there, I don't know what would have happened. They would have murdered more people. There's no doubt in my mind. None.
And after that, after she told you, and I know that you said to Ronnie, why don't you pal up to this girl because maybe you can get that reward money, right? I mean, that's how it worked out because you didn't want to say anything because you.
Well, no, that's not quite it. I had decided not to say anything. And I said to Ronnie at that time, I said, if you want to go ahead and pursue it, it's up to you. But I gave it some thought and I decided that I didn't want to say anything. That was the end of it. The next thing I know, see, I got violated, and so this was in CIW. This was in the county jail, and so they sent me back to Corona. I had no idea that Ronnie had pursued it or was going to do anything, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's when I went to, I'll never forget her name, Mary Ann Dom. I waited outside near the gate where I knew she came in because I decided I just had to speak up. I couldn't sleep. I didn't know what to do. I really didn't, you know? But I knew that I had to do something because I knew that if she got released, and it was a good chance that she might, you know, that they were going to commit the rest of these murders, and one being Frank. And Frank and I had been had a relationship on and off for 10 years from the time I was 19. And so anyway, I made a decision, so I waited for Mary and Dom to come through. And I caught her and I said, Miss Dawn, may I speak to you? I have somebody that had told me that they committed the murders of Benedict Canyon. And she kind of stepped back for a minute. She says, well, go on back to the rec room and I'll call you in a little while. So I guess she wanted to check out and make sure I wasn't some cuckoo, you know?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So she talked to Dr. Dreiser, who I had become friends with somewhat, you know, and next thing I know is they called me to go into the main headquarters there, and I went, and here Sergeant, I think his name was Nielsen. Sergeant Nielsen was there. They contacted LA right away, and so he showed up, and he talked to me for at least an hour and a half. I did not know that they were taping me at the time, which didn't matter because, I mean, but I think they just wanted to check everything out. So he said, I'll be in touch with you. So that was the end that day. The next day I'm in what they call the rec room there, and they had TV on. All of a sudden it blasts on TV that the murders have been solved by an informant. I backed up against the wall. I said, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because a snitch, and I hate that word, but it was what I was doing.
Yeah.
It's not thought of highly, even though it was a horrible murder and all that. That they don't think that way. And
yeah, there's a prison etiquette, isn't there?
Yeah. No matter what, you don't talk. And so I thought, oh God, I'm a dead dog, you know. And I backed up against the wall. But what they did is they didn't identify at that time who the person was, and it was Ronnie. They were talking to. She had gone, I guess, the same day that I had gone, but I had no way of knowing.
Yeah.
You know, that she was there trying to get in touch with them herself, and they had, I guess. Anyway, that's really how it all came down.
And were you? So when you told Ronnie, you had already known that what she was saying was true.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I told Ronnie, I said to her, excuse my English. I said, this crazy bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said, just told me about the murders and so forth and so on. She said, you got to be kidding. I said, no. I said, boy, I don't know what to do like that. And so I said, I've got to think about it, because it was a dormitory, by the way. It wasn't a prison cell. They've always said that. It was dormitory 8,000. And my bed was here, and Atkins' bed was maybe 3 or 4 up from me. And then Ronnie's was about 2 up from her, like that. So, like I said, when I was waiting to find out if they were going to keep me on because I broke parole by going out. My stepfather's, God bless him, he turned me in.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he's the one that did it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, he and I always had a problem. When I was 15, he made a pass at me,
Oh, so then he hated you because of that.
I guess so.
I see.
And I told my mother, and my mother didn't believe me. He convinced her that I didn't lie.
That happened all that time.
Lying. It was very typical. This happens to
Yeah, I was going to say I understand because you don't say anything. You respect your elders even if they're being terrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I understand that. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah. So anyway,
Wow.
that's
So.
in the meantime, Ronnie married my ex-husband. Well, Ronnie and I were friends. Personally, I liked her very much. She was a tall, very attractive blonde. Always was very much a lady. I never ever heard Ronnie ever use any vulgar language at all. And
she was just credit card fraud, wasn't she? Is that what you said it was, or?
I forget. No, hers was drugs. Prescriptions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. She had obviously had a very serious drug problem.
And so she was selling prescription drugs. That must have been it,
I'm
or
not
stealing
quite sure
them.
exactly. Yeah. What was it now? She was forged prescriptions.
I knew it was something about forgery. I thought it was credit card forgery, but it was prescriptions. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And. In fact, which I hadn't known, I found out later, is when she was 17 years old, she had been arrested too and did federal time.
Federal at 17.
At 17 years old.
Wow.
Yeah. And again, it was always behind drugs. And yet when I met her, as far as I know, she was not doing anything like that. And she drove a pink Thunderbird.
Oh, really? Wow.
Pink that you couldn't miss. She drove a pink Thunderbird.
Well, I wish we'd see some pictures of that. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
I would love to see some nice pictures of her because every picture I've ever seen, she looks so like a nasty looking piece of trash.
No. And truly not. I would be the first. She was tall. She had a beautiful figure. She was very, very attractive blonde.
Yeah, they never said.
And I knew when I could see it, and the pictures of her, she looked like some tramp out of the...
dumpy, overweight, skinny. I mean, wearing clothes too small and...
Oh no, and that really wasn't her. Her father was a head of the police department where she grew up, and he disowned her because she got involved and she married a black guy.
Okay.
And they disowned her. Father disowned her because of that.
And she had those because that's how she got. That's how she ended it. Will you pull up that page? Can you pull up that page and find it? Oh, you can. Of course you can. I'm going to play. I wrote this article with some of the information that I had on Ronnie's death, and I don't know if I ever told you that.
No, I wonder.
Let me see what I could, because I wrote this. I had the crime reports, and I had.
Well, I happen to believe that he killed her.
Well, I think so.
I really do. I knew him. He was very violent, and believe me, I'm lucky I'm here, and because I took a couple of shots. But finally, I went back east and I met Dr. Marshall Clavin. I met a doctor back there, And I fell in love with him, and we had a relationship, and I decided that was the end of it, of that. I left him. But in the meantime, I had known Ronnie, and I had introduced Ronnie to him, so that's how they got together. But I do believe that he had something to do with it. I don't care.
So let me read what I have.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it does say that she was a call girl and was imprisoned at Civil Brand for forging a prescription. Okay. She got a new roommate, Susan Atkins. Over the next couple of weeks, Susan Atkins would brag and recount the entire 2 nights of the murders. After the murders, Roman Polanski and friends offered up a reward for information. Let's see, keep going. Ronnie Howard split this reward with the little boy who found the gun. When I wrote this, I didn't know you yet, so I have to update this.
Yeah.
On September 21st, 1979, Ronnie was kidnapped from a bus terminal in downtown Los Angeles by a person claiming to be a taxi driver. This happened at 11 p.m. She had just arrived back to Los Angeles from Vegas with her husband, Rudy, and his brother. As Rudy and his brother-in-law...
With Richard.
Is that his name? Richard?
Yeah.
The brother-in-law was Richard, or?
It was Richard Lopez.
Okay.
Was my husband and her husband.
Okay. So he says, as they returned to the bus station for the luggage, the cabbie took off with Ronnie. She was then taken to 60th and Western, which is just a terrible place.
Yeah.
And she was robbed and beaten. She lost consciousness and woke up in the gutter. She was able to contact her husband, and a police report was made. She said she was robbed of $400 in cash and $800 in jewelry. I'm sure she was. And there was evidence that she had been beaten in the head.
He probably did it.
Yeah. The head and thighs with a blunt instrument. For several days after this incident, Ronnie had suffered from nausea, dizziness, headaches, and was becoming increasingly lethargic.
Okay.
On September 25th, she was taken to Queen of Angels, that's right by us, and treated and released. 10 days later, on October 1st, she was found at home and could not be woken. They found that she had been incontinent. She was taken to Cedars-Sinai. When they checked her in, they reported that she had doll's eyes and that she was absent. She died at 12:30 p.m. on the 3rd of October 79. Brain stem compression, subdural hematoma, cerebral edema, blunt force trauma.
Is that from getting hit?
Yeah, it was just, it was like that Natasha Richardson, Liam Neeson's wife.
The ski thing.
Yeah, she was fine afterwards, but then, several hours later, she had this brain tumor or brain swelling, and she died that way. And I think it was just a long time coming, but I think that was as a result of...
Let me tell you something. If Ronnie would have held her mud with him, believe me.
Oh, yeah?
Believe me. She sure would have, because he was very easy with his fist. That's his picture up there. I think it's...
Oh, right.
Oh, it looks like, yeah, he's almost kind of a...
He was a stuntman.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
And his name is Richard Lopez.
Yeah. He was very, very good looking. Yeah, he was in the movie industry from the time he was 3 years old. His mother put him in the business, and his brothers were all in it too.
Wow. I'm going to see if I can get this to play. I can't. I was going to play this interview with Ronnie I have posted, and...
Well, I had just heard some of this, and I never believed it, I felt that they had an argument, they had possibly been drinking, and he probably belted her one, and like I say, knowing Ronnie, she would not let you just belt her.
It's a pretty complicated story, that had happened, like... I heard then, maybe I had some news articles about her dying, how she had been, I think I did find news articles from the time where she had been, when they dumped her, she had hit the curb with her head, and that's what might have done it. But you're positive it was Richard that did it.
Yes, I did. I really feel strongly, because again, having known him and his temper, and that's the first place he'd shoot for is your head.
Really?
And your stomach. Oh, yeah. I took off and I went to Hawaii. I stayed in Hawaii for years. I changed my name. I mean, my last name. Nobody knew who I was. and I kept it quiet, and then I finally decided I wanted to come back here to the mainland, you know. I figured that it would be okay, and I've been here ever since. I should have stayed in Hawaii because I loved it there.
Yeah, yeah.
I loved it there.
And you came back to Arizona, why?
Well, my mother had lived, well, I had lived in Tucson, and a gal that had worked for me was here, and she said to me, why don't you come on here instead of I was going to go into Tucson. So I knew her quite well, and so I decided to go ahead and come here. And I was going to go probably to work in one of your major art galleries because I'm very, very good at that, and I really know my stuff when it comes to fine art. And so that's how come I came here. And that's it. I should have stayed in Hawaii.
Now, you had a spa there, didn't you, in Hawaii?
Yeah, the Hilton Hawaiian Hotel.
And did you closed that to come back here?
Yeah, no, I didn't close it to come back here. I had left it, you know. Well, I had just left the business.
Oh.
Right, and I stayed there for a little while longer, and then I decided that I wanted to come back to the mainland because I had hoped that maybe my son would come and visit me here rather than go all the way to Hawaii, because I could never figure out why he wouldn't go that far, but he was in his own business and everything, and so he didn't. So anyway, that's how come I came here, and then I knew a few people that were here, and then also in Tucson I knew some people. But I almost went back to Tucson, but instead this friend of mine talked me into coming here.
I see.
So that's how I got here. So anyway, Ronnie, how actually then did they say she died? They believe
it was like a cerebral hemorrhage. It was a blood clot.
Blood in the brain.
Yeah, blood clot in the brain.
Something like that. Yeah, from being hit or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, that whole story about 11:30 at the Great House station. She thought she was being picked up by a
That doesn't
taxi.
make sense.
No, believe me.
Yeah.
No.
It's fishy.
I am totally convinced.
Was he abusive to you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's why I know. But and that was only when he would drink. Otherwise, he was really a first-class guy. But give him alcohol, and that personality changed. And that's why I'm very anti-booze, because I've been on the bad end of it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I'll never forget what she said to me, about poor Sharon Tate, how she begged her, please don't kill me, I'm going to have a baby. And she says, and I looked at her and I said, bitch, I don't care if you're going to have a baby or not. And then I killed her. Just like that. Cold as ice. I mean, just really.
Monsters.
That's stuff that you'll never forget.
And
the thing is, they're trying to get out, and I hope never, ever should they ever walk outside that prison.
Yeah, I agree.
I've had people say to me, Virginia, they were young. And so I said, I don't care how young they were. I'd like to see somebody get me to sit on some poor soul's back and stab them 16 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no explanation as to why they would do that. I do not believe it was behind drugs. I really don't.
Leslie's the only weird exception, and the only reason she's an exception because she, a lot of people don't realize that
they all came from good families.
Yeah, and a lot of people left. A lot of people left the family and said, "We're out of here. We don't go for any of that weird stuff." But Leslie, the only thing that sets her apart, and this is in no way I'm not defending her.
No,
I'm just saying that
right. I don't know her.
During the trial, her attorney died, and they gave her another trial. And the second trial, it was a hung jury. She was out for 6 months. She worked as a secretary at an office. And then they gave her a third trial. In the third trial, she was found guilty and sentenced to life with a chance of parole in 7 years, which made her not get the death penalty.
Yeah.
She was eligible for parole in 1979. And she's been approved by the prison 3 times.
I
And
know.
all 3 times the governor has vetoed it,
Yeah,
which
I
is
know.
his right. But the only thing I could say, I mean, these convictions are individual. The jury came up with those convictions, and so that doesn't mean everybody gets that conviction because of what she did. But she didn't murder anybody. This is, again, I'm not defending her. This is just a fact.
No, I understand.
But people that have murdered people have spent less time in prison.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's, I would say that makes
Have
her.
you had a chance to interview her?
No, I don't. I wouldn't even attempt it. But I'll tell you, I've made, since Manson is dead, I've become friends with one of his friends, and he was friends with Manson, but he wasn't a Manson follower.
Yeah.
But he was very interested. See, as I like to talk about Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring, he was a Manson person, but he wasn't a Manson follower.
Yeah.
So when he would talk to Manson, he'd say, you know, you really threw those girls under the bus. And Manson would go, well, you know. And if he ever brought up the murders, because that's really what prompted him to be interested to talk to him,
Yeah.
Manson said, that stuff, that's your trip. You know, I don't want to talk about that.
Uh-huh.
But talking about a code of ethics, Michael, my pal, there's 2 people that are eligible, are fighting in court for Manson's estate. Which,
Yes, yes,
and
I
Michael is one of them, my friend, and the other one is this kid who's supposed to be his grandson, Manson's grandson, but it's never really been proven that he is his grandson.
Who was supposedly the mother, do you know?
Well, no, it was a father. It was a Charlie Jr. Because he was married twice, Manson, and he had a son, Charles Jr., and he also had several other kids.
One of them just killed himself.
That was Charlie Jr. Now, this is his grandson, Jason Freeman is what he goes by, and he's in Florida. And he is the one is going against my friend Michael, who has a will, but the will was signed in prison, you know, so that's the, you know, who the witnesses were serial killers, so there's a legitimacy issue there. But Michael, it's fascinating to get a bit of background on Manson. Because, I mean, like, as him as a day-to-day human being, you know, Manson listened to Aretha Franklin. Isn't that bizarre to think that Manson played Aretha Franklin records or tapes? You know, and that was interesting to me.
Well, he would. I remember Vince Bugliosi told me that he was extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
He had I think he told me his IQ was 169 or some really high there. And he really, well, you know what? He had a hell of a life. You know, I mean, from the time he was a child, I mean, he really did.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then,
and
he was a little guy. You know, this was not a great big strapping fellow, you know, and he was raped in prison and everything else. I mean, he really had a hard way to fly.
Yeah.
You know? So,
yeah, he didn't know any other life.
No.
Because there is that code of ethics.
Yes, there is.
And it's fascinating, even if you're in there for what you did.
Yeah, and I knew, like I said, I knew that. And like I said, that's the only time I really did. I backed up against the wall.
Yeah, I would imagine
and
so.
they didn't, thank heaven that they didn't mention my name at that time. But I mean, I had gotten approached later on of, why did you say anything? And I said, don't you understand?
Yeah.
I mean, these were people, they were murdered. Horrible.
And they were going to go after more celebrities.
Yeah.
That's what they kept talking about.
They certainly were.
Yeah. Who was Sinatra? Who was your buddy?
Yeah, he sure was.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, believe it or not, I think that probably might be one of the main reasons that I did go forward.
I figured that.
Yeah.
I figured that was why.
Because of the relationship I had with him and the fact that they said how they were going to kill him and skin him. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And sell him on Hollywood Boulevard. Some awful stuff. And I thought to myself, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're not going to kill anybody. Yeah. But anyway, like I said, I went to Hawaii and stayed in Hawaii for years, which probably was a very smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have a letter there. I don't know if you ever saw it that was sent to me by Elizabeth Taylor.
Oh, you did show me that.
I did show
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was really nice.
Yeah, that was
The man who was the courtroom artist was had a little thing at my shop, and I'll put it back there.
Thank you.
And it was very interesting to talk to him. He was there every day for the trial. So he was probably. I wonder if he has any pictures of Virginia that he drew, because he drew pictures. He was there from jury selection all the way up until the verdict every day.
Do you remember his name?
His name is Bill Robles, but there were a lot of artists. Excuse me, at that time.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm gonna ask him if he's got any drawings with Virginia. That'd be fun to know.
Yeah.
Hey, I was going to ask you. There was something that I wanted to ask you in your Hollywood
Hollywood days.
In your Hollywood days,
That I used to live at 10332 Wilshire Boulevard. Frank lived 10372 and a half Wilshire Boulevard, just a few doors up from me.
Oh wow!
Yeah, before I ever got involved with him. But here he was just living right up from me.
That's so funny.
Yeah. But it was really funny, really how I met him, you know.
And how did you actually meet him? I forget now.
I had been in a Tahoe and I came back. And I had met I made a few friends while I was there. And what the heck was his name? Anyway, he called me up and he was over at Don the Beachcombers. And he was with his girlfriend. And he said, Virginia, come on over. He said, I'm here with whatever her name was. And he said, I have a friend I want you to meet. And I said, oh, okay. I grabbed a cab because I don't drive. I grabbed a cab and I went over to Don the Beachcombers and I went in. His name was Rinaldi, Paul Rinaldi. And I was at Mr. Rinaldi's table and he said, all the way to the back. Well, you couldn't see.
Yeah.
You know, because it was dark in there. And I went all the way down. And with the band that he wanted me to meet had his back turned to me. And as I got up close to the table, he stood up and turned around. And when I got up to him, he grabbed my hand. He said, hi, babe, when are we getting married? And it was Frank Sinatra. I almost dropped dead. And now I'm a very talkative person. I got news for you. I didn't open my mouth for quite a long time.
Yeah.
But he was so down to earth, and he was so friendly, I just forgot who it was. And he and I became rather good friends then, and I saw him on and off quite a few years.
Wow.
Yeah, he was that people have always bum-rapped him, and that's not so. He had a bad temper, but the way he was harassed by the press, because I was with him in Vegas, and I mean he couldn't even breathe. I got followed to the ladies' room by a couple of dizzy broads that saw me sitting there with him, and I went to the ladies' room, and they followed me, and I'm nobody, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But and then when we went back to New York, and we stopped in Chicago, and when I got out of the car, I mean, I almost got wiped out
mm-hmm.
with them after him. And he lost his temper, but speaking from another point of view, he was very, very good to whoever it was at that time that he was dating. He always seemed to be attracted to women that had children. Don't ask me why, but he really, really was. And he sent my sons bicycles and, my God, all kinds of things.
Wow.
Yeah. Now, I knew the good part of him.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know he lost his mom in a plane crash.
Oh, he did. He wouldn't take a plane if he could avoid it.
Yeah.
He always had a fear of it. So, like I said, when he had called me and he was going back to New York to do the show back there, he asked me if I'd like to go with him. So we took the train, the El Capitan, and that's when I met Ronald Reagan too.
Wow.
Yeah, Ronald was standing outside we were getting ready. We were on the train, and Ronald was standing out there, and Frank waved to him, and we went like this to him, and so that he joined us on and off for the 3 days we were there. He was really a first-class nice man. Reagan, yeah. And he talked about his wife and how much he loved her. I never have heard anybody talk so much with kindness and love as he did about her. Really, I'll never forget that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were. I was with the president for 3 days.
Yeah.
Not really, but you know.
Yeah.
But that's when they formed their relationship, actually, was from then on. They became very dear friends.
Even though they were politically on different sides of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Your history. You are an important part of history and an important part of this case. So
Well, I guess so. I never really thought that much about it, you know. But I find that the past couple of years, I can't get over how much they still are into Manson.
Yeah.
50 years later.
And now that this movie's come out, it's forever. You know, that's the thing. You know, like Hitchcock's movies, his movies are going to be studied. I used to think in another 10 years they'll probably be forgotten, but not anymore. Now Tarantino has made these people infamous. And it's nice that it's done in that nice way, that they're still alive and happy.
Now that you told me about it.
Yeah.
I don't know what the heck my friends were looking at.
Well, it's
They didn't understand it. They didn't get it at all.
Yeah, it's not a typical movie.
I know from what she told me. Oops.
And that picture, I don't know if you remember that picture on your old book. There's a woman on the cover with her, there you go, right there, on a telephone. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Who, is that you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it always was me.
It's a great phone that you have your hands on there.
It what?
It's a cool phone.
Oh.
Play for pay girl.
Yeah, I hate that.
Yeah, I know. It's tacky. What does it say in the back? The average man or woman from Main Street, USA may not have heard of this Virginia Graham. Oh, because of the talk show, yeah.
Yeah, everybody, the few that have commented have gotten confused with
Yeah.
I said, no. In fact, she tried to sue me for $2 million.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Because she wanted you to change your name.
Yeah. I beg your pardon. Actually, Graham is Miggle, and that was my stepfather's name. And I changed it for. I thought Virginia Graham sounded a lot better than Virginia Brown. But I used the name Romney Ames.
What'd you use?
Romney Ames.
Romney Ames. That's a sharp name.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that's the name that I really became notorious by with all my Hollywood friends. Romney Ames.
So this one says, maybe you haven't heard of her, but everyone in the know, and that includes Hollywood's top personalities, actors, directors, visiting celebrities, and political bigwigs, is aware of what her game was.
Yeah.
Until recently, Virginia Graham was the most successful and sought-after play-for-pay girl on the West Coast. She and her staff of lovely ladies provided a satisfaction guaranteed service
That wasn't quite true, but go ahead.
it was the talk of the town. She ran into a little trouble and was jailed, but even in prison she managed to meet interesting people. Like Susan Atkins, her cellmate, she says, who confessed to her how she and her friends, all members of the Manson family, had butchered Sharon Tate. Virginia thus became the leading witness for the state in the Manson trial. Somehow Virginia Graham always manages to stay in the spotlight.
It's the truth. And believe me, even when I don't try.
There you go. When that first book of yours, is the only thing you objected to was the title?
Yes, that, and it really wasn't. I wasn't a call girl, and that's always bothered me. At all, because if somebody called me up and said, come over here, it's going to cost so much, never, ever, ever would I do something like that. But I always made it a point to know the right people, go to the right places, And a lot of the girls that I knew, they were trying to get in the picture business. And I always had a big, beautiful house and the whole thing. And I used to have parties, and I would invite them. Now, what they did when they walked outside my door, I never got a dime from. No, I didn't from them, and. That kind of offended me because it always sounded like that I was a hooker.
They were appealing to that 60s housewife who wanted to read some, because there was Coffee, Tea, or Me. Remember that book about the airline stewardesses? There was just the adventures of these, they're airline stewardesses that flew around and and they were. I don't know. It was just 60s was a play swingers time.
Yeah, it was.
And to housewives and people not in those major cities, that was juicy reading. Now, but that was Sinatra in any of those books? I don't think so. Your old book.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think so.
He probably would have come after him.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Like I said, Frank only really came into the picture, as far as I was concerned, is when she told me they were going to kill him.
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean, like when that first book came out, it was after the Manson thing, and you were already involved with Sinatra, but they left all that out of the book. You didn't get any of that in there. Yeah. Because that's what I said. They wouldn't want to mess with him.
I guess not. No.
He's a fascinating character.
Oh, really? He really, really was. Well, he and I thought a lot alike because we kind of grew up in the same type of area, and I guess that's why he and I got along so well. I grew up in Southwest Philly, where again your major singers and movie stars all came out of there, out of Philly.
Yeah.
And I left there when I was, what was I? I was 90. I lied about my age and got a job at Calneva in Tahoe. And
what did you do there?
A cocktail waitress.
Yeah.
Only for the summer, and then I came back to LA. And like I said, that's when I got a call from this person, Paul Rinaldi was his name. And it was his girlfriend and him that I had met up there, and he's the one that called me and said, "Come on over and join us on the Beachcombers. And I have a friend I'd like you to meet." I said, "Okay."
Why not?
Didn't say one word as to who it was or what,
You found out.
Yeah. Well, it was a real shock. When you stand up and.
That is so funny.
He was so down to earth and so friendly,
And did you ever do any like hang out with him in Vegas or in Palm Springs?
Oh yeah, I went to Vegas with him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then I went to New York with him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure, on the El Capitan.
Wow.
And that's when Ronald Reagan stepped into his life. I mean, they knew each other, but there was no close relationship there.
But Reagan, he wasn't a player, was he?
No. Well, I shouldn't be so adamant. I don't know if he was, but I never picked up on that at all. He was he just talked about his wife.
Yeah. But I think I told you last time when I interviewed you, and I read Peter Lawford's book, and he said that Nancy was. They said that she gave the best head in Hollywood when she was still Nancy Davis. So they're saying that might have been an attraction for she was a player, right? And Sinatra was part of her brood. They said that she was messing around.
Well,
with
I heard she had the hots for him.
Yeah.
I had heard that. I didn't know if it was true or not.
But and I didn't realize they were friends, so that makes a little bit more sense because I remember when Sinatra visited the White House when they were when he was president, when Reagan was president, and Nancy and Sinatra were dancing, and there was rumors about them slipping out to the back room or something that afternoon.
That's
or
a
that
possibility.
day.
But the one thing about Frank, though. From what I observed and what I knew, he never would mess with anybody's. If he was friends with somebody, he would never mess with
With their girl, yeah,
no,
yeah.
He had a very kind of strict thing about that. He was a player and a half, but I never picked up on that. I don't know. Maybe he did.
Well, that's it's a different time, and guys were as much as they played would have. Oh, well, it's a code of ethics.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the same. If you're a moral human being, and morality is spelled different ways for different people.
Yes, it is.
But if you just be a decent person and respect each other, then that's a code of ethics there, and that's all you need.
I know when I went to Palm Springs with him, he lived right next to Bing Crosby at that time, and he invited quite a few people over, and he jumped up on the piano there. He jumped up on the piano, and he was singing for them and everything. Yeah, He was quite he was a certainly different person, you know.
Nancy, we saw Nancy not that long ago. She lives in a friend of mine's building in West Hollywood. So we were visiting, and Nancy's walked by, and we were like, "Yeah, Nancy, Sinatra, Nancy Jr." And that was, well, she's a legend as far, she's talking about somebody that's definitively 60s, in the 1960s with the go-go boots and the mini skirts and.
Oh yes, I remember it well.
Wow.
Yeah.
That was it's an era that I miss. That's one of the reasons this movie was so important to people, because
Oh, I'm so glad that you told me.
I mean, when there's a stretch of Hollywood Boulevard that he literally put back. He doesn't do anything that's. A lot of people are lazy, and they'll put computer generated buildings, and he didn't know. He put every storefront back, and the ones that were there in 1969, and they filmed actually at the Playboy Mansion, even though. Some of it he took liberties with, because the Playboy Mansion didn't become the Playboy Mansion until 1972, I think it was, and this movie was to take place in 1969. Yeah. So he took some liberties, but it's a fairy tale. Yeah. It's once upon a time. Yeah. So he took like the most wonderful parts of the 60s, and
really in the late 50s and the early 60s, it really was a very good time.
Yeah. And I think the end of the 60s was the last of the Hollywood, when Hollywood was still somewhat...
Oh, it was.
The studio system was it broke? Yeah, it was broke up right about then, wasn't it? The studio system when...
Yeah.
Was it
no,
that
before that had already happened.
When performers were no longer under contract with certain studios, like the MGM had its stars, and then that broke up, and I think Jane Fonda was one of the first people that was out of that, I think. But anyway, saw her not that long ago on the anniversary of.
She looks pretty good. Doesn't
she looks great.
Yeah.
But she was at the El Coyote, is the restaurant where the Tate and those others supposedly had their last supper the night they were murdered, the El Coyote restaurant. Oh. So some friends of mine were there at this table where they say Sharon Tate sat with Sebring and those guys, and they were sitting there, and then Jane Fonda came strolling in with her dog, and she goes, "I don't know who you are, but I'm going to crash your party because I'm going to sit here because my friend Sharon sat here." And that's what it was bizarre. Yeah. Sitting here, and all of a sudden Jane Fonda comes walking in.
When I think about it, how bizarre was it that I would end up where I was, but talking to the person that committed all these murders.
Yeah.
I mean, the chances were 1,000,000 to 1. I mean, really. And why she picked me? I'm not a religious person.
She said you have a kind face. I think she said that, didn't she?
Yeah, she got my eyes.
Well,
I had nice brown eyes.
You were. I mean, the fact that you were in there with Ronnie, who was married to your husband.
I was shocked when I saw Ronnie walking up the aisle. I'm like, what are you? I hadn't seen her for quite a few years, you know. And there she was.
And you were in that house. And you knew Jay.
Yeah.
And you knew Sinatra, and they started blasting the Sinatra business at you about him killing him. It's just like you were in the thick of it without even being in the room.
Yeah, I know. I do. Every now and then I sit and because Vince even said to me, "Virginia, what in the hell are you doing here?" Because it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
you know. It wasn't though, really, and I think that's probably always bothered me, that people would think I was some kind of a criminal or something, because if you were in jail, you had to be a bad person,
Right.
you know. But how stupid, you know, stupid ass check.
Yeah.
I mean, for a hospital bill. And that's in the book. And well, you know, before we did this book, we had to get permission from Vince. Yeah. Everything had to be accurate, you know, and true. So, and it was everything that I put in there. Yeah. So anyway, he passed away. I was so surprised to hear that he had passed away. You know.
Yeah.
He was a fabulous attorney.
He certainly knew how to get his job done.
He really was.
Yeah.
He told, I have a dear friend of mine, he was talking to her, somehow my name came up, and he said, Virginia helped make me famous. And so he had said that to me. I said, no, Vince, I didn't make you famous. You became famous because you're a fantastic attorney. And I really felt that. He was, I talked with his wife on the phone a couple times.
I met her once at a book signing of his, and she seemed really very nice too.
Yeah, when I talked with her on the phone, she was. Yeah. He had a problem with, what's his name, Steve, that took his place. That's
Stephen Kay.
Yeah. There was a problem there. And he ended up becoming a partner of Bob Steinberg. That was my attorney.
Really?
They became friends. They were partners for a short time after he left working for the state.
And so Bugliosi had a problem with Stephen Kay?
Yeah.
Why was that?
I don't know.
I wonder. Well, maybe Stephen Kay, after Mr. Bugliosi, sort of. Stephen Kay would always show up in the interviews. Maybe that's what it was. He always went to the parole hearings, and Mr. Bugliosi didn't. And Stephen Kay would always show up in the documentaries, and Mr. Bugliosi wouldn't.
Yeah.
So maybe he thought he was getting a show busy kind of career out of it.
I don't know. Could be.
Maybe.
But I knew that there was some kind of a problem there. Yeah. And then. The attorney that I had, I ended up working for him as his receptionist.
Oh my gosh, how funny.
Yeah, well, he wanted the publicity from me, you know.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. So he would, I would go to court when I had to go with bodyguards, and it was outrageous, you know. We would go past the building and the Manson family. They were all outside, and as we would go past, they would go like this to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so scary because they did it.
Yeah.
That's because you knew they could. Yeah.
Well, you know, I got called up until it's been over 2 years because I wasn't living here, by the detectives that were still trying to find some of the bodies that were up there, if I remembered anything. Well, she had told me that they had killed other people, but she never told me who they were or what. But she did indicate that they were up there. Yeah, and they were still. This is 2.5 years ago. They were still trying to trace certain things. All these years later.
Oh, they certainly made an impression.
Yeah, boy, didn't it? Yeah.
Wow.
April 17th, 2022, Phoenix, Arizona. Virginia Graham, a pivotal witness in the Manson family murder trial who provided heinous details of the infamous killings, has died. It was Graham's testimony in 1970 that helped put together the murders of actress Sharon Tate and 4 others on August 9, 1969, as well as the August 10th slayings of grocery company owner Lino LaBianca and his wife Rosemary. Graham offered compelling details of the murders, pieced together by jailed Manson follower Susan Atkins. Graham testified Atkins boasted of terrorizing murder victim Tate, who was 8 months pregnant. Graham testified in detail what occurred at the Tate and LaBianca slayings, as told to her by Atkins, as well as information implicating Manson. After numerous conversations with the jailed Manson follower, Graham was convinced Atkins was involved in the murders, quoting what Atkins said to Tate as she was stabbing her to death. With Graham's key information and riveting testimony, prosecutor Vincent Bugliosi was able to paint a gruesome picture of the murders and the influence Manson had on his followers, leading to the convictions of those accused in the killings. In the following years after the trial, Graham moved to Hawaii and became a salon and art gallery owner. Throughout her life, she rescued many cats and dogs. Virginia Kathleen Graham, also known as Virginia Brown, was born on December 10, 1932. She is survived by 2 sons. No services are planned. Memorial donations may be made to the Jerome Humane Society, Allen Street, Jerome, Arizona, 86331.
Thank you and aloha and goodbye to Virginia Graham.